In December-January, parking at Nelson Bay comes at a premium. In a bid to increase the turnover of car spaces, the local council doubled pay and display parking from $1 to $2 per hour until January 25.
It gives the opportunity for more people to visit the waterfront, and realistically there's still plenty of free parking around.
But some business owners say customers are now spending less time browsing and buying because they're worried they'll get booked.
They'll sit down and have a coffee, and I literally sit there and I watch people looking at their watch.
And while doubling the price of parking may seem harsh to locals, when compared to other tourist capitals like Sydney, $2 an hour is still pretty cheap, and most people seem happy to pay it.
It's reasonable in holiday season.
Well, at least you can find a park now.
Well, it was easy to find that, but you got to pay for it, yeah.
$2 is steep. I think it's a lot.
But the shop owners say comparing the Bay to other holiday destinations is a mistake.
This isn't Sydney, this is somewhere people come away to relax, and it's taken that whole atmosphere away.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News. If the hunter received a tourism report card, the comment would read reasonable, but some areas need work. Figures for the 12 months to September 2005, which have just been released, show a 4.6% drop in domestic overnight visitors, but the state average was down 7%. The region has managed to strengthen in other areas, with attractions like the Hunter Valley Gardens contributing to an increase in day trippers. And it seems strategies to avoid the expenses of advertising in costly overseas markets have been successful, with the number of international tourists steady.
It's much more cost effective to get the journalists, the travel writers and those involved in the tourism trade over here to experience the region firsthand.
To combat any downward trends though, the region's tourism body will test a new marketing strategy aimed at changing the way consumers view the Hunter as a holiday destination.
It's about dividing the region into bite-sized chunks that people from outside the region will understand and therefore motivate them to have a holiday here.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Management of the Hunter Pirates called an urgent press conference this afternoon for what is a desperate situation.
With attendances that we've been having of late, it's been very difficult to see that we could make it work.
Struggling to get more than 1,500 people to a game, it's a problem being encountered right across the league.
The box sales are up, but there is another part of the business that is down.
That's where former Pirates General Manager Butch Hayes steps in, volunteering his services to help promote the club free of charge.
Getting people in to help put, excuse the expression, bums on seats is no drama. And that's all this group does.
Among the changes, the club will adopt a more community-minded approach. That includes an appearance by former Miss Universe Jennifer Hawkins this Saturday night.
She's going to be involved on the night, and she's just a beautiful, beautiful person and a good ambassador for the Hunter.
However, should crowd numbers stay the same, it'll make signing a major sponsor that much harder, presenting a whole new challenge for the club's owners.
Those people would all love to see it stay in the Hunter, but with some of the attendances we've been getting, it's a bit demoralising, particularly when we've got a team that's doing exceptionally well.
It's just sort of a minor hiccup, an off-season training, just a little bit too much load in the gym sort of thing, so I just sort of had to rest it off a bit, and no, it's feeling pretty good at the moment, so I'll be back in the training next Monday.
Involve John Singleton and you're guaranteed a show. Not for the Knights though. The advertising guru, through the Hunters Blue Tongue Brewery, has become the single biggest sponsor in the football club's history. A viewpoint not shared by everyone, but his is worth $4 million to the club over 5 years. It's an unlikely marriage given the problems encountered by sporting sides, largely blamed on too much drink. Nevertheless, it's one the club is determined to make work. Knights boss Ken Conway revealing just how close the club came to the brink. As far as Blue Tongue is concerned, it plans to triple its output from its Cameron Park headquarters. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
There are plenty of houses for sale in Mayfield at the moment, and plenty are being sold. The latest figures show 38% more people are buying in the local market than 6 months ago.
Last year at this time, the market wasn't looking that great. Prices were falling, and people were a bit hesitant with the vendor duties and other state taxes. Since they've been abolished, there's been a bit of confidence come back into the marketplace. Prices have bottomed out, and now is a great time to get out and buy.
The median house price in Newcastle has fallen slightly in the last quarter to $290,000, and together with low interest rates, the market is favouring buyers, with a number of suburbs showing good value.
Mayfield, Lambton, Cardiff, Charlestown, they're probably the suburbs that I'd be watching because they're built around major infrastructure, and the prices have come down quite significantly in those areas over the last 12 months.
Wayne's top 5 value suburbs have Mayfield at number 1, followed by Wallsend, Cardiff, Glendale and Charlestown. Out of town, there's also a standout.
Well, there's some enormous things happening up around the Maitland corridor over the next couple of years. So in and around those Maitland areas where there's major employment growth and major infrastructure being spent in those areas, they're also areas to get in and buy now.
Scorching temperatures, then rain today, and it couldn't have come at a better time.
The weather in the next 8 weeks is what life's all about. This bit of rain we're getting now is absolutely fantastic.
The Hunters' recent heat wave has done irreparable damage, burning leaves and destroying between 5 and 10% of the region's crop. Winemakers are now expecting the vintage to be on par with last year, when 17,000 tonnes of grapes were harvested. But even that might be more than the industry can handle, with around 1,000 tonnes of grapes still waiting for a buyer.
Sounds like a lot of fruit, but compared to most other areas, it's actually quite small. And it's really because the Hunter's all about quality, and there's normally always a home for good quality fruit.
An oversupply of the fruit has forced McGuigan Simeon Wines to cancel a large number of its purchasing contracts, and growers in 3 states are now considering taking legal action. The director of McGuigan Simeon Wines, Brian McGuigan, today said the company is entitled to terminate its contracts because of a clause within them. It's expected to take several months before the matter is finalised. Colleen West, NBN News.
At 23, James Nitties has spent half his life practising the game of golf and is keen to see his investment pay off. On Saturday, he flies to Singapore to contest the Asian Tour School.
It starts with about 600 guys in first stage, and then, a certain amount of guys qualify through to the final stage, and then they give out 40 full Asian Tour cards, and from about 120 guys in final stage. So, if you can finish in the top 40 of that final stage, you get your full exemption.
If he qualifies for the Asian Tour, he'll also have the opportunity to play in some dual-sanctioned European events. But in the meantime, it'll be down to business back home in Australia.
I'm only away for about a week and a half, and come back, I'll have a couple of days off, and then straight into the great Australian summer events like the Johnny Walker Classic and the Jacobs Creek. So always look forward to playing in Australia, and it's fun because they're real supportive of the young up-and-comers.
While the wet weather kept the crowds away from Maitland Pool today, they weren't given any choice on New Year's Day, ironically one of the hottest ever recorded, following a senseless act of vandalism. Rubbish bins were upended into the pool along with furniture. Human excrement was also found in the water.
I just can't believe people can do that. Puts the whole public out. A lot of people were turned away from the pool on a hot day.
The following day, East Maitland Pool was closed after human waste was found in the water. It's believed a group of vandals cut their way through the fence before doing the unthinkable.
I think it was appalling, absolutely disgusting. Why would someone want to destroy the kids swimming? Come and having a good day, especially on that very hot 44 degrees heat.
Hopefully, we don't have this occurrence too often because it is an inconvenience to the community.
Maitland City Council says the acts have cost thousands in lost revenue along with clean-up costs. And while it could prove an expensive exercise, Council will now consider increasing security at both pools. Colleen West, NBN News.
Thieves came well prepared to steal Fluffy the diamond python, first cutting a hole through a fence, then breaking into the koala enclosure of Blackbutt Reserve. It was then a smash and grab job the volunteers like Fluffy's home shattered.
It's very disappointing, especially with all the effort that's gone into producing this new exhibit, and also very disappointing for the public.
It's an elaborate setup and will take 3 weeks to fix at least.
They've probably done $1,000 worth of damage breaking in to steal a $200 snake.
Fluffy had only been in her new home since Christmas Eve and was taken from it on Wednesday night. She's just 2 years old.
Still only about as round as a banana, but it's about 4.5 feet long, about 135, 140 centimetres long. So if anyone knows of someone that might have come into possession of that recently, give us a call.
Her roommate Jaws slept right through the incident and has since been relocated. With a clever quip, a police statement has grabbed widespread media attention, hopefully to Fluffy's benefit. The only other witnesses were night owls, they say, who couldn't give a hoot, and a number of koalas high on eucalyptus leaves. Adam McKilrick, NBN News. Thieves came well prepared to steal Fluffy the diamond python, first cutting a hole through a fence, then breaking into the koala enclosure of Blackbutt Reserve. It was then a smash and grab job the volunteers like Fluffy's home shattered.
It's very disappointing, especially with all the effort that's gone into producing this new exhibit, and also very disappointing for the public.
It's an elaborate setup and will take 3 weeks to fix at least.
They've probably done $1,000 worth of damage breaking in to steal a $200 snake.
The 2.5-year-old had only been in her new home since Christmas Eve and was taken from it on Wednesday night. Late this afternoon, police found Fluffy in a house at Windale after a tip-off from the public. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Hasbag will travel. Ante Milicic joined his teammates this morning. It was the question everyone was asking the striker after a calf muscle strain had sidelined him since before Christmas. And while it's not the best, time is running out in the semi-finals race.
With the result last week that really went against us, it sort of brought us back into the pack a bit. So, with these 5 games, you've got to give whatever you can.
Milicic didn't play in that 4-1 drubbing at the hands of the Mariners last weekend, but feels the team is desperate to make up for that tonight.
We're the type that we can bounce back. I know we can, and deep down inside, I'm confident we can do something tonight.
Stuart Michalek will just be happy to get back on the pitch after illness floored him last week.
I had a good session yesterday and that, and I'm feeling really fresh. Really had probably a week off and that to get over the illness, so yeah, I'm feeling really good.
Despite Richard Johnson's inability to overcome his ankle problem, the young midfielder is likely to start off the bench, while a reshuffled backline is also on the cards, given Mateo Cordobo is suspended.
The pressure's on for us, really, because we really need the result badly.
It's the same as last year. Adam Melling made the round 4 and that was the best the Aussies did, so kind of struggling a bit in this contest.
An intensive ground and river search was carried out in the early hours of this morning following reports a man had fallen into the Hunter River near the Torres Street Bridge at Mayfield West just after midnight.
The 2 fishermen have decided that due to the number of snags they were getting with their lines, they would climb onto the bridge, they go up onto the bridge and then try and climb down onto one of the pylons.
As the men were attempting to climb over the handrail, one of them slipped, falling into the water.
With the incoming tide, he was quickly washed away under the bridge and then further upriver. And that was the last time he was seen.
A search by police, water police and the Westpac rescue helicopter failed to find any sign of the man early this morning. Just as they were due to resume their search at 7 a.m, police received a call from a member of the public to say the body of a male had been discovered among the mangroves at Ash Island, a couple of kilometres upstream from where the fishermen had fallen. The incident has sparked a reminder from police to ensure fishermen are equipped with good footwear and are wearing a life jacket, as well as making sure they don't fish alone. Colleen West, NBN News.
It started like most other fairs, just a short run from the Nelson Bay Golf Club into town. But at the end of the ride, the 22-year-old passenger said he didn't have the cash, but would go and find some. Another man gave him the money, but when that second man wanted to go somewhere too, the driver, Barry Cartwright, told him he was already booked. And that's when the trouble started.
After a while, he got a bit abusive. He spat at me, slammed the door, and then started hammering on the side of the cab as I drove away.
It was then a group of young men standing on the corner grabbed the two men involved and held them until police arrived. Their efforts praised by the 57-year-old cab driver.
I think it's great. I mean, it's good to actually see some young people who actually want to get involved and help in any way that they can. I really think it's great.
The two 22-year-olds will face Raymond Terrace Court next month. It's been a busy few weeks on Hunter roads and it's not over yet.
We generally find that people leave their accommodation on Saturdays to travel back home, and more people are travelling to their holiday accommodation to start their Christmas holiday.
That was a case today with a steady flow along the Pacific Highway in both directions, while at Hexham traffic was banked up for several kilometres. Driver reviver stations were put to good use, with dozens of families taking that all-important break, and Highway Patrol Police have had their work cut out, issuing 515 speeding tickets since the 23rd of December. That number is up significantly on last year, along with drink driving offences and the number of people booked for not wearing a seatbelt. The result, frustrating police.
Compulsory seatbelts wearing started in the 1970s, so there is no excuse for people not to wear their seatbelt. People need to take responsibility for their own actions. It's basically, that's the bottom line.
Police will continue to have a higher presence on our roads until the end of the month, when Operation North Roads wraps up. Speed, drink driving and the wearing of seatbelts are being targeted. Colleen West, NBN News.
What a job description for Steve Eagleton against Sydney FC. Shadow the league's star signing in Dwight York. The rest of the Jets followed a more simple game plan: defend to the last. After last week's 4-1 hammering, Newcastle had to, and they made Sydney work for everything. Eagleton was watching York like a hawk, because when you didn't, he showed just how dangerous he could be. Half chances were as close as anyone came in a half that was hard fought in every sense. Richard Money looked for change in the second term, as Sydney skewered its best chance to break the deadlock. Alan Picken must have had his heart in his mouth when he gifted David Carney a chance, while skipper Ned Zelich found just enough to deny him another. Pierre Labarski couldn't look, as Sydney watched more chances slip by. Ongoing knee trouble ended Zelic's night early, while Mark Milligan was lucky not to follow suit after a dangerous-looking challenge on Nicky Carl. Sharing the spoils, the top 4 race is still wide open.
You turn up to a game, you're ready to play, and so it doesn't matter what's happening around you. Once the game starts, you sort of kick into game mode and it all goes from there.
It's been anything but a happy new year for the Bay's business owners who've had to put up with increased parking prices and now the blackouts. Restaurant part owner Simon Jones has been forced to close his establishment twice in the past week because of the power failures. This time of the year is big business at Nelson Bay, but instead of doing a roaring trade, Simon's counting his losses.
We lost the trade. 2 nights in the busiest week of the year. Looked at about probably $10,000 worth of turnover, just not being able to open.
And not receiving an explanation is only adding to the frustration.
I haven't heard anything of why it happened or what's happened or if it's expected to happen again. It's obviously a pretty big issue if they're building all this accommodation for people to stay in, to come to Nelson Bay, that they haven't got the power supply to support that. There's a pretty major problem there.
This all comes just days after Energy Australia launched a new $16 million line into the area. And while further improvements are planned in the way of a substation and second line, for this year at least, it might be a case of too little, too late. Energy Australia says the blackouts were caused by an underground cable fault, then short-circuited wires, and power was restored within a matter of hours on both occasions. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
More than anything, I guess, good luck for the next 12 months. It signifies the blessing of the waters for the next 12 months, so I'm very honoured to win it.
It was a scene the franchise had hoped to see from the start of the season. Fans had lined up out the door of the entertainment centre at tip-off, as more than 3,500 turned up for the game. Some may have been seduced by the attraction of former Miss Universe Jennifer Hawkins, but players would rather believe it had more to do with their form. Aaron Trahair certainly gave them plenty to cheer about early. Bobby Brennan, though, just as good from in close and long range in a flowing first quarter. It was the second term that the home side went off the boil. Missing their own shots, Brisbane went on a real scoring spree, hitting some 16 unanswered points to take a 62-46 half-time lead. But this was still going to be a real battle. The skipper did his best to fire things up, but it was Mike Helms who led the scoring, with a team-high 23 helping the Pirates close the gap. Geordie Cullen's one-hand jam had the crowd on their feet as Hunter closed to within 4. but Brisbane rounded things out to win and leapfrog Hunter on the ladder.
We've got Wollongong, Sydney and Adelaide, so it doesn't get any easier. But we needed to desperately win that one.
Quite happy with how I've been going this year. Just really liking my bike, and everything just seems to be put in place and going really well.
An empty space. This is the infrastructure council has poured almost $500,000 of ratepayers' money into. It took 4 years to get the weekend mall markets off the ground and just 4 months for them to be placed into voluntary administration. But council claims the money it spent on paving and disabled access is worth every cent.
On this occasion, council elected to invest in stimulating that area of the mall. And I think that investment has been worthwhile because we will get a return on that investment in due course through this operator of the markets or perhaps another one.
Ratepayers' money has just been totally wasted, and I don't believe that the General Manager and Lord Mayor can stand back while this continues to happen.
Councillor Buman says that money would have been better spent on projects in urgent need of attention, such as fixing pavers in the mall, new parking areas or upgrading the Newcastle baths.
The baths is a classic one, as is Shortland Esplanade. I don't think council are capable of dealing with commercial ventures.
A creditors' meeting will be held on Friday to decide whether the company behind the markets can trade its way out of trouble. Colleen West, NBN News.
It's hard to miss the Royal Newcastle Hospital, an institution which has always demanded attention.
Good evening. Tonight in focus, 2 anniversaries. Royal Newcastle Hospital is 150 years old, a long time for any institution in Australia.
That was in the late 60s. Even then, the Royal had its problems.
Surgeon Evans once complained that with 25 men to care for, he had only 3 blankets.
Once described as a 2-room hut on a forsaken sand dune, the hospital kept growing.
It was different from the big Sydney teaching hospitals because they just didn't seem to have the family atmosphere that this hospital had.
Dr. Betty Capper trained at the hospital in 1946 and taught there later on. The former nurse turned historian knows the Royal inside out.
It was home to me. When somebody said to me, when I was having my first baby, where was I going? I said, I'm going home.
But as of April, the site will no longer be home to the hospital as services are relocated to the John Hunter campus. The farewell party begins in March, though, with a huge get-together.
The conference is multidisciplinary, so it's a reunion of everyone from carpenters through to surgical specialists.
Former patients are also invited. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Contract talks began, then stalled well before Christmas. But Richard Johnson will sit down again with club management on Wednesday to nut things out once and for all. Allowed to test the market after initial talks broke down with the Jets, his first choice hasn't wavered.
My thoughts haven't changed. I definitely want to stay and hopefully we can get it sorted out.
It's Friday night. His manager wants to see him back on the playing field after an ankle injury forced Johnson out at the weekend.
Just been icing over the weekend, just relaxing and just trying to get it right, and it feels okay today, so like you say, day by day we'll just step it up.
Already missing defender Mateo Cordobo to suspension, the Jets will be without Jade North for a week as well after he picked up a fourth yellow card against Sydney. Newcastle slipped to fourth on the A-League ladder after last night's game on the Central Coast. The Mariners booting home an extra time match winner against the New Zealand Knights to leapfrog the Jets. It was this melee just inside full time though that's become the real talking point. Involving most players and clearing both benches, a pitch invader added to the ugly incident. 3 players were yellow carded while the Football Federation is now investigating the incident as well.
We're seeing large swells come in, and with the rough surfing conditions we have, sort of best to exercise care and close the beach for swimming as we have.
As far as extreme sports go, mountain cross may look harmless enough on the surface, but scratch a little deeper and the tight twisting circuit is packed with a series of jumps, dips and other riders.
You start off with a plan, but depending on where you end up at the first straight, your plan gets totally thrown out the door and you have to figure something else out.
That is, of course, if you make it that far. Even if you do, there's something lurking around every corner that you just can't bargain for. The dog was fine, the rider shaken, but the fans love it, even if they can't see everything coming. Still, it's labelled spectator friendly as riders come to grips with the track and each other. It's enough to take your breath away, but you get the feeling this style of racing is here to stay.
It's very spectator friendly. I mean, all the crowd likes to come out and see the crashes and big jumps and the guys style it up, so it's just going to get more and more popular.
Nathan Rennie should know he rides professionally overseas most months of the year. He couldn't win the national round at the weekend though near Newcastle, that honour going to Alex Lloyd.
Santa was very good to Sian and Lily Garvey delivering them battery-operated bikes for Christmas. Looking like regular motor scooters but limited to 30 kilometres an hour and fitted with pedals, they don't require a licence. Officially, they are bicycles. But in reality, they are more than bikes and safety training is a very good idea.
Craig and I had discussed a lot of times that, if we were to purchase the bikes for the girls, that we wanted to provide some, safety and awareness on the road for them before they actually go out and have a ride.
And that's exactly what they were doing today, learning the basic road rules, including where to ride on the road and when to indicate.
stop at a stop sign and to look both ways, and not to go across the pedestrian on the bike. That not to go across the pedestrian, that you have to walk back across.
Police are encouraging new riders to ensure they learn the do's and don'ts of the road and footpath before riding.
Fines can be incurred by push bike riders, and police in this area are active with detecting them and prosecuting those offences.
Anyone over the age of 12 must ride on the road, not the footpath. A helmet must always be worn, and a rider caught crossing into the path of a vehicle or pedestrian can expect to be slapped with a $50 fine. Colleen West, NBN News.
What a day Glenn Valere was having. He'd qualified for all three senior finals for the second time. The first was the over 28s, a title he claimed, but no time for champagne celebrations. Rather a quick sip and back for the 35s decider, where he placed second to Justin Lee. In a huge upset though, neither Paul Parks nor Lee, who have 11 open titles between them, reached the open final. Both were victims of young gun Sam Landrum. The 15-year-old Catho Jr. had turned giant killer in a big way and was hoping to become the first junior to take the Blue Ribbon event in well over a decade. Conditions didn't make things easy in the six-man final. Daniel Frodsham, though, found the right rhythm and carved his way to the top of the judges' poll in an effort straight from his coaching manual. In his third straight heat, Valere's Ironman performance was rewarded with third.
When the owners of these dogs arrive to pick them up, they'll have to shell out an extra $55. A stray animal will now cost $165 to have it released from the pound, the fine increasing by 50%. Excluding pensioners, council pet fees have also been jacked up, the biggest hike reserved for owners of non-desexed cats and dogs.
We find that animals that have been desexed are generally healthier animals. They are less inclined to roam from their home.
The last fee increase was 8 years ago, the revenue to be spent by local councils implementing the state's tough new dog laws which kicked in on Friday.
Owners of just dangerous and restricted breeds need to ensure that their dogs are kept within a prescribed enclosure, that when the dog's outside of that enclosure that it's wearing the prescribed collar and that it's also muzzled and wearing a lead.
A change in legislation bans the selling, acquisition and breeding of 5 restricted types of dog. In extreme cases, people who don't follow suit face a fine of up to $55,000 and 2 years imprisonment. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
Oyster farmers at the southern end of Tilligree Creek have been devastated by a harvesting ban imposed when traces of human waste and a stomach virus were found in oyster meat. The poisoning was caused by leaking septic tanks near the waterway. Council has since found of 470 tanks, 50 were failing.
In some cases, the disposal area has been destroyed by cattle or horses. Other cases, there's minor blockages. In other cases, there's leaks.
While most of the 50 faulty tanks have been repaired, Council says 18 septic systems still haven't been fixed.
Legal action is the last resort, but Council will take legal action against any property owners that have a failing septic system and refuse to upgrade that system.
Repairs for the 18 remaining septics could cost a couple of $100s for minor leaks or up to $12,000 if a new system is needed. Faulty tank owners with financial problems can lodge a hardship application with Council. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
According to retailers, they're coin-guzzling meter monsters, keeping shoppers away from Newcastle's CBD. But it's soon hoped they may not need to be fed on Saturdays and Sundays, with Hunter Street Mall traders calling for paid parking on weekends to be abolished.
It deters a lot of people from coming into town, I feel. A lot of people, and even a lot of people say during the week they won't come in on the weekend because they have to pay for parking.
Trying to bring people back into town and rejuvenate the CBD, and I think paid parking is a big deterrent.
They're opting for other alternatives rather than, coming into town. It's too expensive.
Newcastle Council will review 7-day metered parking in early March, but the General Manager wouldn't give too much away today.
If it's going to help business, then and the city centre in general, well, it's an option that we've got to look at.
Last year, Council created free parking on weekends in their multi-level car park to entice people to the markets, but Janet Dawes says the public overlooked Council's generosity.
Well, our experience shows that the free car park in Bolton Street was hardly used at the weekends.
$2 million is raised by parking meters each year, while parking fines bring in close to $500,000. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
The rubbish we've discarded grows into mountains, swelling by the minute at the Summerhill Waste Management Centre. When the organic waste in landfill decomposes, it produces landfill gas.
There's a few problems with landfill gas in terms of it's about 50% methane, which is a gas that can form explosive mixtures.
Methane is also a greenhouse gas. To reduce its impact on the environment and to prevent explosions, the gas is currently extracted from the landfill and burned off in an enclosed flare. But South Australian company Land Management Services wants to redirect that gas to an on-site power plant and use the methane to power generators, converting gas into electricity.
You're getting all the same environmental outcomes as we're getting at the moment, but you get the additional benefit of actually using it as a fuel source.
LMS has lodged a DA to build a 2.2 megawatt plant at the Wallsend dump. It says that could supply energy during peak output to power 2,000 homes. The company hopes to be producing electricity from methane within a matter of months. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
No one at the Newcastle Jets really wants to talk about their last game, and when the subject matter involves a 5-0 loss, you can't blame them. But it seems the match remains on their minds.
There's a lot of players in that dressing room and a lot of people within the club who want to give something back to the supporters for the disappointment of last Thursday.
While admitting the side's form has been scratchy in past weeks, it's a question of composure under pressure. The players are keen to answer in one simple display.
So we're going to have to prove people wrong, aren't we? We're going to have to show that good teams do come back, and I believe that we do have the character and the players to do that.
With Richard Johnson out suspended, his midfield role will be filled by either Stu Michalek or Jobe Wheelhouse. And it seems the experienced pairing of captain Ned Zelic and striker Ante Milicic will also play, even though they sit on 3 yellow cards. Another on Sunday, and they'd miss the first semi-final. A risk manager Money seems prepared to take.
I'd like to try and gain some sort of momentum and some stability going into the grand final series.
With that in mind, the club has suspended contract negotiations with players until after the semi-finals, leaving the likes of Richard Johnson in limbo. Jim Callanan, NBN News. Hunter Pirates chairman John O'Brien barely had time for this interview. Immediately after, he rushed into a teleconference with solicitors and accountants to see if the company that owns the franchise can become a not-for-profit organisation as early as Monday.
Which potentially opens up the option of government, semi-government and trust funds giving us some support.
Unable to attract a major sponsor, the restructure would be the last throw of the dice for owners who feel it may be the only way to attract funding and keep the team alive. Either way, by midweek, the club will have a clear indication if they can muster the needed support. And failing a positive response, a sale of the licence and relocation would be almost guaranteed.
The goalpost is certainly one of the potential purchasers, but watch this space. There's some interest. We have been approached by some people with an interesting proposition.
The side, meanwhile, heads to Perth to play the Wildcats on Sunday. After a disappointing run in Canberra, Ross was determined to make up for it in Sydney, and he shook off a nervous start with a trademark finish. A headwind denied a qualifying time for the Games, but the result should be enough to convince selectors, with main threats Patrick Johnson finishing third, while Matt Shervington placed fifth. Newcastle cyclist Olivia Gollan, meanwhile, is a definite starter for Melbourne next month, with confirmation she's in the road race team. Professional rider in Europe, it's a rare chance for Gollan to shine on home soil.
The thing about Commonwealth Games is that it will definitely be televised to the whole nation, and yeah, for my family and friends to see that, it's great.
And what a schedule. Gollan will contest the Geelong Tour, World Cups in both Australia and New Zealand before racing in the Games, and then return to Europe the following day.
The thing about Commonwealth Games is that it will definitely be televised to the whole nation, and yeah, for my family and friends to see that, it's great.
It's been almost 3 years since Cabinet met in the Hunter, regional visit set by Morrissey Emma's predecessor.
Almost everybody who applies with a reasonable cause gets an opportunity to talk to the minister of their choice.
Maitland will host the meeting on the 21st of this month, and the city's mayor has some questions of his own.
The future of the rail line is one that we in Maitland, of course, will be pursuing. There is still some concerns over the third river crossing here in Maitland.
Casting the net wider, when will Tea Gardens get its flyover at that Mile Way intersection? Is the Swansea Bridge beyond repair? When will Newcastle have a multi-purpose shipping terminal? And what is the government's intention with the Port Stephens Marine Park? With so many issues troubling Hunter voters, the meeting will give the new look Labor government an indication of just how safe its local seats are.
That's the whole idea of it. I mean, there is a lot of scepticism. There's a number of announcements that we in the Hunter have been waiting for.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
There's just something about the Across the Lake swim, and just over 200 swimmers set out from Coal Point for the 3.8 kilometre trek this morning. Not long into it, redhead clubby Kyle Garrett opened up a lead, with the chasing pack also featuring the quickest women. A tick over 45 minutes and Garrett emerged the winner, with long-distance specialist Shelley Clark following shortly after to claim the women's. The New South Wales Country Water Polo Championships continued at Newcastle's Lambton Pool today, with Lake Macquarie's unbeaten run in the Open Men's Division ended today by rival Central Newcastle 9-4. Both teams had their National League stars missing as they rested ahead of tonight's debut match for the Hurricanes. And Athens Olympian Tom Turner was among the field at today's State Grand Prix double trap shoot at Awabba. Missing Commonwealth Games selection, Turner now has his sights set on the World Championships.